get along with other people. And if you need me to read any of this because my handwriting's kind of sloppy, let me know. Traders. Traders is in the same paragraph.
I think I know that.
You know it?
Like,
It says,
like you give me something, I give you something.
yes, you trade. Yep,
Oh.
exactly. Exactly, you trade. So it's something, you get something from someone, but for a price, because you give them something in return.
You have to give me something.
Yes. So I could say, Harold, I want a soccer ball. So you give me your soccer ball, and I'll give you my bag, my really expensive Coach bag that I bought. And you can give it to your mom or whatever you want to do with it. That's a trade. That's a trade. Maybe not a fair trade, because a soccer ball is not quite as expensive as a Coach bag, but it's a trade. So you get something from someone, and you give them something in return. You get something and you give something in return.
I think I know that word.
You know plentiful too? Hold on, let me find it. Let's see. Ah, there it is. It's in the third paragraph.
Yeah.
Let me give everybody a chance.
Like,
So it says, the crops were plentiful in this area. Let's read the sentence before it because that'll give us more of an idea of what it might mean. It says, however, the cultures were all separate or divided, as each group from one foreign land refused to trust any other group. The crops were plentiful in this area. What are crops? What are crops?
like,
Okay, it's stuff that you eat,
yeah.
but it's stuff that you grow usually in the ground.
Oh. ¿Cómo se llama?
Corn.
Corn, yes. Yes, like corn would be considered a crop, exactly. So if the crops are plentiful, what do we think that means? Christopher, do you have any idea? Plentiful. The crops were plentiful in this area. What do we think that means? You don't know? What? It's a new word. Harold.
They are like, you put in the, like, ¿cómo se dice? In the
In the ground?
yeah, in the ground,
Yes.
and it's gonna, like, get like a plant.
Yes, there's a lot of them. Plentiful means there's a lot of something. They're growing a lot. They're growing all over. You can find it. You can find it anywhere. So if it's plentiful, it means there's a lot of it. Well, you wouldn't say a plentiful of. You would say the corn is plentiful.
Or big.
Yes, or big. Exactly. You could have a huge amount of corn. Perfect. Does anyone want to start reading about the southern colonies? Anybody want to try it? Mina, go ahead.
Southern colonies existed on the following areas: Virginia, North Carolina,
Yep.
South Carolina,
And Georgia. Perfect. Do you guys want to locate that on the map? Find it on the map? Mina, you want to try it? Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Perfect. Those are the southern colonies. You can see that they kind of get further and further down. Here we started out with the New England colonies, then the middle colonies, and then the southern colonies. And you can kind of see why they're called the middle colonies, because they're right, what? Where are they?
Separate?
They are separate, but they're right in the middle of the two groups, right? They're right in the middle of the New England colonies and the southern colonies. Mina, do you want to try reading the first paragraph, or you want to let somebody else try? You want to try it? Go ahead.
shelters of the southern
Colonies.
colonies. Jamestown was the first area in Virginia to be
Populated.
which operated in 1687.
Yep, 1607.
The people of Jamestown come to Africa and was very poor and with unlike the other colonies and settlers that were used Jamestown was to provide rich and to get back on the field.
Good. So what this is saying is pretty much that people from England came to the southern colonies, like Jamestown, that was the first area, it's a town in Virginia. They went there because they thought they were going to get rich. They thought they were going to make all kinds of money and they could bring it back to England for their families. So that's why they moved to the southern colonies. The next paragraph says, unfortunately, also keep underlining words as I read. Unfortunately, the English gentlemen that founded Jamestown were not used to working, and they did not do well for this very reason. John Smith had to put the Jamestown settlers under his control. He would make sure they were working, or he would not allow them to eat. Many settlers ended up dying in Jamestown because of the poor location and the lack of order for so long. So what does that sound like? What does that sound like? It doesn't sound good, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like there was a man, his name was John Smith, and he was making sure that these settlers were working, or else he wouldn't eat. He wouldn't let them eat. He wouldn't give them food.
It's like the box.
It's like
Boss.
yeah, he's kind of like the boss, and a really mean boss. I'd be pretty upset if my boss didn't let me eat. And the next page says, it took John Rolfe and the tobacco industry to make the southern colonies successful. Other crops that ended up doing well were rice and eventually cotton. In the South, there were huge plantations that would plant miles of crops. Each plantation needed many workers. The people working on these plantations were either indentured servants or slaves. An indentured servant was someone that would work under a contract and receive some form of compensation or pay. Usually, the worker would receive food and a place to live. The difference between an indentured servant and a slave is that a slave is purchased or bought, and their work contract would never run out. At some point, indentured servants were able to go and move to another place if they wanted to. Did anybody underline any words in those two paragraphs? Nina? Contract? That one? Contract. So let's see. It says, an indentured servant was someone that would work under a contract and receive some form of compensation. And compensation is like pay for their work. Oh, cotton. Okay, well we'll do contract first since we already started, and then we'll move to cotton. Sorry. Miss Phoebe's a little deaf, so we have to speak loudly for her so she can hear. Perfect. Okay, so contract. What do we think contract might mean? Contract. If they worked under a contract and received some form of pay. Harold.
Like when you work in something, you get money. Because
Exactly.
You're working hard.
Yes. You get pay for your work. It's like an agreement. You and your boss agree, or you shake hands, you say, okay, you're gonna work for me, and I'm gonna give you this in return. So it's kind of like an agreement with whoever you're working for. And cotton. Cotton, other crops that ended up doing well were rice and eventually cotton. Rice and eventually cotton. It's in the first paragraph. the second line. Other crops that ended up doing well were rice and eventually cotton. What's cotton? It's something you grow. Cotton is actually, a lot of our clothes are made out of cotton. It's like white and fluffy. Yeah.
Oh.
You know, alcohol.
Yes. Yes. You use it to, like if you get a cut, you clean it out. You use rubbing alcohol on cotton and you rub it, right? But that's cotton balls. Cotton though can also make clothing. Like my shirt is made out of cotton. Socks a lot of times are made out of cotton. There's a lot of things made out of cotton. Do you guys understand? Catherine, you
I
okay?
saw one tree of cotton.
What?
I saw one tree of cotton.
You saw what? Sorry.
Tree.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. A cotton tree. I've never seen a cotton tree, actually. No. What does it look like?
It's
Big? Oh, okay. It's a good size. Yeah. Good. Any other words you underlined? Catherine, you said you underlined something. Indentured. Indentured servant. An indentured servant, it says actually in the next paragraph, was someone that would work under a contract and receive some form of compensation. So it's when you're an indentured servant, when you have an agreement with the person that you're working for, and you're gonna get paid. They give you pay, but it's not money. Usually they said it's food. So you work, you get food. You work, you get a home to live in. So instead of money, you get all of these things. You get food, a house, things like that. And it's different from a slave, because slaves are bought. People buy their slaves, and they don't really pay them. The slaves just work. And they don't get the option to move either. If they want to move, they can't. But indentured servants can. The last paragraph.
Yeah, I have one.
Oh, you have an underlined word?
Uniform.
Oh, unfortunately. Unfortunately means, like sadly, or, it's when, like, the sentence says, where is it?
Yeah,
Oh,
the
it's
last one.
Unfortunately, the English gentlemen that founded Jamestown were not used to working, and they did not do well for this very reason. So, they didn't do well, which is kind of sad. They didn't do very well. So, unfortunately, they didn't do very well because they weren't used to working. They didn't know how to work, really. Yes.
They like work, like no good.
Yeah. Yep, and unfortunately you can use that in any sentence where you're talking about something that didn't really work out very well. It could have worked out better. If they were used to working, if they knew how to work, it would have been better for them. So unfortunately, they didn't know how to work, and it didn't work out well. And then the last paragraph says, each colony helped to form present-day America, where we live now. The New England colonies helped us by showing us the need for religious freedom and tolerance to all groups. The middle colonies taught us the importance of government and the good that can come from treaties or agreements, contracts, with groups that are different from us. Finally, the southern colonies taught us the importance of a good economy and the need to work fairly together in order to thrive as a society. So in order to be a good society or a good group of people working together, you need all of these different things that each of the different colonies taught us. The New England colonies showed us that having religious freedom is important. The middle colonies taught us that government and having rules and agreements with different kinds of people is important. And then the southern colonies taught us the importance of a good economy, or how to work and get something in return for it. And all of these things together help us work as a country, or as a big group of people together. That's the end of the reading. Now for our closing, if we could turn to the next page, it says the 13 Colonies worksheet. We're going to answer to those together as a class.